Greetings, this is Scholar Saunders Scene. What's current? Now I'm doing a little bit of early show. Mr. Troy Star Terrain calls these research shows. I guess I got a research show I'm doing. But I'm also gonna be doing a show later on where I'm gonna crash out. It's Friday. I got another idea for clips. So be ready for that. But today is the 6th installment of my series on African American serial killers. And this is the first woman entry. Yes, a woman in the mid 20th century murdered apparently 14 people, but definitely one person. She was sentenced to life in prison in Atlanta, Georgia. Let me see. Her name was Roberta Elder. And she murdered her family members. Essentially, she murdered her previous husband, her current husband. That was the one that she went to a trial for. She murdered the younger children. She murdered a 91 or 93-year-old woman. She murdered all these different people. She just happened to be black. And I just wanted to talk about that for a little while. I got a video. I don't think they'll be able to take this down. This is from a news source, so I think it's fair use. But it's gonna explain the various ideals. And of course, you can go down to my Vocal page, vocal.media, and read the story yourself. I'd appreciate it. This is a story that is often swept under the rug. Hold on. Here we go with hate. I need this hate. Son of Sun 90. Here we go with another show the subscribers don't need or care about. Well, that's a shame because I need it and I care about it and I want to talk about it. So why are you here? That's the question. Why come to me and say on my show that you don't want to watch the show or don't care about the show? You obviously have to care about it because you wouldn't have written that, right? Am I right? Okay. So I'm going to go to the video. And let me see. Oh, it's a pain.
All right, think of a poison. I read your mind. Arsenic, right? Well, arsenic actually is a metal. And when we talk about arsenic being a poison, we're talking about compounds of arsenic, like arsenic trioxide or arsenic sulfide. Those are the classic ones. Arsenic sulfide is available as realgar or orpiment. These are naturally occurring minerals known to the ancients. So poisoning with arsenic goes back a long time. But most people, of course, are familiar with the 1944 movie Arsenic and Old Lace, or they've read Agatha Christie, who used arsenic as a poison, or perhaps heard stories about Napoleon, who was poisoned, so the story goes, by the British. Or, if you don't like that story, arsenic used in the wallpaper where he was imprisoned leached out into the air and that poisoned him. Anyway, we know that arsenic is highly toxic. The Borgias, of course, used it to poison people. And then there was Giuliana Tofana, an Italian lady who specialized in creating wealthy widows by poisoning their husbands. It's not surprising that royalty was worried about being poisoned, mostly by arsenic, and kings had tasters. And of course, they could dispense with the taster. If the taster perished, they knew not to partake of the food. In ancient Korea, though, the kings had a different idea. They knew something about chemistry. They knew something about silver and tarnishing. Silver, of course, is a bright, lustery metal. But you know that if you leave it out into the air, this is what happens. It tarnishes. That is not silver oxide. That is silver sulfide. It happens because the air has traces of hydrogen sulfide that reacts with the silver and you get the tarnish. Of course, it can be cleaned off, but this is the bane of silverware collectors. Arsenic sulfide will react with silver to tarnish the silver. And the ancient Korean kings were aware of this. So what did they do to detect arsenic in the food, if there was any? They would resort to silver chopsticks. The idea was that if there was arsenic sulfide in the food, the silver would tarnish. Not likely to have worked because you need quite a bit of arsenic to tarnish the silver, and furthermore, it doesn't happen right away. Also, there are other foods that contain sulfides like garlic, so if they were eating garlic, that also would have tarnished the silver. But there is something interesting, though, historically, about the use of the silver chopsticks. Because in Asia, of course, chopsticks have been popular for a very long time, made of bamboo or other types of wood. But Korea is the only Asian nation where metal chopsticks are still used. And that probably goes back to the time of the ancient kings, because the people wanted to emulate what the kings were doing, but of course they couldn't afford silver chopsticks, so they started to make chopsticks out of other metals. And that tradition has continued to this day. If you go to a Korean restaurant, a proper Korean restaurant, you will be given metal chopsticks. Of course, you won't be eating any food that is tainted with arsenic. Most likely you will be dining on kimchi, which is a fermented food, and it's very interesting because it contains a lot of bacteria. And as a probiotic, it is said to be good for us. So you don't have to worry about arsenic in the kimchi. However, the salt content, that's quite stunning. Of course, when you eat it occasionally, as we do in North America, it's not a worry. But in Korea, where they eat it often 3 times a day, there's a frightening increase in hypertension and also of gastric cancer that has been linked with the high salt content. And of course, the metal chopsticks are not going to detect the salt. Your taste buds will.
All right, so looks like we will have a day where we don't have to, worry about copyright. I think that was fair use because it was coming from a news journal, the Gazette. But I wanted to explain, give you just a preface of what the reasoning why I chose that clip. It's because Roberta Elder used arsenic. I think it's is it a legend? Because there's very little understanding of whether she actually did murder these people, because she didn't get tried for the murders. So it's weird when you say that she was a serial killer, because from what I understand, what I read, all the documentary I saw, it says that she killed 14 people, but she was only tried for one person. So is she guilty of the other 13 people, or is it, just suspected? I mean, it's not been fully confirmed, so, but I'm, for the sake of this particular post, I'm going to say that she was guilty. She was a serial killer that murdered 14 people, and mainly people in her family, with arsenic. There was one example of her husband feeling ill after eating banana and cheese that she may have poisoned with arsenic. And he was experiencing, what the doctor just was talking about, like a case of food poisoning, or your lungs having pneumonia, something like that. Son of Sun 90 says, Sky, what WTF is this history class? He's trying to get under my skin. He's calling me brother. That was cute. But like I said, you don't have to be here. You really don't have to be here. I'm going to do what I do. I don't care who is in here or not in here. I'm going to do what I got to do. And I thank you for coming at me. Thank you for the hatred. I appreciate the hate. But and I got 3 people in here. That's pretty good. That's a good run for me. But anyway, so the arsenic is something that is very, corrosive, obviously, to the human body, very toxic. And she used it for leverage. She wanted to get life insurance policy. And I think she didn't get huge life insurance, like a $5,000 or a $10,000, life insurance policy, even though that's a lot of money right now, but that's not really nothing at all. And but what it would have been in the 30s and 40s and 50s, that would have been a good chunk of change. But she just did 150 and up to $550 life insurance policies. Isn't it an antifreeze? I don't know. You have to go to Google's. You have to get to Googling. I was mainly focused on the story about that. 10K is the average. Okay, but what at what time, Sun 90? I'm talking about in the mid 20th century, in the 1900s, 1930s to the 1950s. What is the average then? What was the average then? But she definitely had a okay, 10K is the average premium for now, but what about what it would have been for then? Well, it would have probably been like $800 to $1,000, probably, if that, maybe 500 or less. Probably, the 1930s and up to the 50s. She started her I'm gonna say it, reign of terror, her rot. I'm just gonna say her rot because I don't want to say because it's such a cliche. Her reign of terror started in 1938 and it went up to about 1952. Yeah, that sounds about right. Sun 90, maybe 2000. That sounds about right. But yeah, so she started allegedly in 1938 and it stretched all the way to 1952. The reason you probably never heard about her, if you don't care about her, that's your business. But I care about her. I care about her, the story. I care about the victims, the people that she killed. Who did she eliminate from this game called life? I briefly mentioned it. Her former husband, her three stepchildren, her an older lady in her 90s, a few other people, people very close to her that she had life insurance policies out on. So she knew what she was doing because she had trouble with money. She had money woes. She owed people, so she wanted to. I guess the thing to say in her mind is that, well, let me kill my family members, get their life insurance policies, and keep it moving. Oh, so she like a Black Widow. Well, yeah, I guess you can say that in a sense. Yeah, you say she's a Black Widow, but more than that, she didn't just kill her husband. She killed children. She killed I don't know if she killed her siblings. I don't remember them saying that. I remember she killed both her ex-husband and her current husband at the time, and the children as well. They all got sick from the arsenic and perished. So very, very serious subject. And I want to make a comment. As many people have heard, I listened to a podcast, a very good podcast. I can't remember the name. The name escapes me right now, but she was explaining how the reason excuse me. Let's just say a murderer, not even a scammer. I mean, it was more so a murderer. The scam came way after, with the life insurance policies. Let's just say she's a murderer. Salute to you, Turin Shock. Is it Shack or Shock? Reed or Shake? You spell it out phonetically. Sir Rick James, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking our favorite topics, killers. Skylar Saunders Seas is going to discuss what biological measurements causes a man to take another man's life. Fact, the Black Charles Manson. Well, it's a woman this time. It's a woman we're talking about this time, Mr. Rick James, Sir Rick James. Actually talking about a female. And she was diabolical. She maintained her innocence. She says she was never guilty. After all the evidence, and of course, this is the mid 20th century. I mean, they had a few, investigative tools that they could use, but they couldn't use DNA. They couldn't use, various tools that they have now, the computer systems and camera systems and different things like that, not available at all. So okay, I don't know what that means, Turin. You got the YouTube logo. I'm just gonna call you by Turin, okay? I'm not gonna say Shaq or Shock or Shake. I don't know how to pronounce it. You have to say it phonetically. You have to spell it out phonetically. But yeah, and if you're not a subscriber, make sure you subscribe, Turin. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And bring a friend whenever you have this. My show comes on, and say, man, this silly nigga named Sky, man. He talking a lot of talk about killers and serial killers and stuff like that, but he makes it into a good point. So if you could just kindly do that, that'd be much appreciated. And I say that for everyone in here. But anyway, so we got Roberta Elder. She is despicable. She's disgusting. She's a horrible excuse for a human being. These men and women did not. No, I'm not monetized. I'm only monetized through Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal. That's how I'm monetized. I have to get monetized through watch hours and subscribers. I need 13 more subscribers and about 3,000 more watch hours. So I am not monetized. I'm only monetized through your donations, which are much appreciated. I made thousands of dollars using PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App. So I appreciate it. So anyway, I've been doing a little bit of housekeeping, I know, but Roberta Elder, she died in an almost unmarked grave. It was pretty nasty. Okay, I got to read this because this is hate. Son to Son 90 says, ladies and gentlemen, live from Sky Closet in red pumps with poom pooms autographed by Star himself and a tutu designed by Skylar himself. Ladies and gentlemen, we introduce to you Rick James. I like the hate. Thank you. That was hate on me and Rick James. You can hate on me all you want, but try not to hate on Sir Rick James because he's one of the greatest supporters of this machine. So I definitely appreciate him. I appreciate you too, Son 90. Thank you for that hate, but direct the hate more so towards me than Rick James. So Roberta had, she said she never even touched arsenic. She said she never even knew what it was. She didn't even. This is how deep these lies go, and the self-deception goes. I mean, it's clear as day. It happened in the hospital. One of the doctors was like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem like just pneumonia. This seems like something else. And they found traces of arsenic in the hair of one of the victims. And they're like, oh no, we got to run. We got to. They actually exhumed the bodies of the daughters of minister. He was actually a minister elder, and they had to dig up the bodies, dig up the coffins, the caskets, and investigate even further how much arsenic would be found on their bodies. And I think I'm trying to remember. I have bits and pieces, but from what I understand, they found the traces, and it just kept on going from there. And that's probably the most interesting part of this entire story is the fact that she was only tried for one murder. She's suspected of killing at least 13 more people. In total, it was 14. So it just goes to show you how devious and wicked this woman really was. Because I am saying, for all intents and purposes, for this particular, I used to say allegedly, but I'm not even going to say allegedly because everybody's dead. And there's no, I don't think anybody's going to be arguing. But everybody from that time period is dead, or blind, crippled, and crazy. So it doesn't really matter. But that's where I'm getting it. That's the kind of idea that I'm formulating in my mind when I'm reading these stories and I'm listening to podcasts and or broadcasts and watching the documentaries. I mean, there's a whole list of documentaries on YouTube all about her, and I think that's healthy. It's healthy because this is racism. There was another murderer. Her name they nicknamed her the giggling granny, I think, or something like that. Yeah, $5,000 is a lot of money in 1930. You're right. That's why she used small ones, but she amassed a lot. Like I said, she killed 14 people. But if you take a life insurance policy out on each one of those, that adds up. Even though they're 150 up to 550, dollars, it'll add up. It'll definitely add up. So these are the facts. These are just the facts. Roberta Elder, has to be remembered. Not for any great achievement, of course not. I'm not trying to, make that. It's mainly for the victims, mainly for the family, the extended family of the people that were victimized. I mean, I'm sure they're still alive. The descendants, the people that the great grandmother, the great grandmother, the great grandchildren, the great 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 grandchildren, and stuff like that. They're probably still alive and kicking. I'm sure they know that. They probably don't want to talk about it. I understand that. I can get that. But we have to remember these kind of things. We have to know them, not for shock and awe and oh my god and oh yeah, champion a serial killer. But no, it's just to show you how they show white serial killers, these brilliant masterminds. They're just geniuses. They know what they're doing. They know how to navigate through a situation and dispatch people. And it's like they put that in the movies and TV shows and all like that. Hardly do they show a black woman serial killer. I mean, have you ever even heard of that before this story? I mean, you may have. Like I said, there's a treasure trove of documentaries on YouTube that you're able to peruse, but hardly they're not going to teach it in high school. You may get a class in college, especially depending on your whatever major you have, whatever you plan to study. They're going to talk about it, but they're not going to talk about. But like I was going to say, with this giggling granny, I think they called her. She had like 11 kills or something like that. And she was, every time she was asked about this story, she'd go, ha, she's like laugh it off. Like it was like nonsense. Like she didn't kill 11 people. But Roberta killed 14 people. And I'm not saying allegedly. I'm saying Roberta killed 14 people. So we have to really just take that all in and really understand how, Roberta was able to do all this, for almost 2 decades, from 1938 to 1952. She had the opportunity to lead a great life, live in Atlanta. I mean, be a wife to a minister. She had a previous relationship, but that fizzled out. But she killed him and killed her current the man she was married to at that time. Torin says now they would get caught and thrown in jail for life. Are you talking about black women? Who are they, Torin? Who are they? Who are they? Let me know. But Roberta, she definitely had her own, notion about going with this life. It was about death. It was about destruction. It was about this, no value system or a very low frequency value system. She didn't value life, the highest value that there is, the certainty. She denied them their constitutional rights. in the most heinous and vicious way. She poisoned them. Oh, these 1930s killers. Okay. Yeah, you know what? You're telling the truth. I mean, that's why we have, like I said before, we have all these measures. We have drones, we have DNA, we have camera systems, we have, all these different chemical, compounds that can detect certain things. We can see in people's, facial expressions and their body language and different things like that that really didn't correspond to tightly or wasn't across the board from the 1930s to the 1950s. We have a higher level of sophistication regarding investigating various crimes now. That's all I'm saying. And I think, she would have, Roberta would have been, she would have definitely, I think if she would not have confessed to the murders, they would have been solved just like that. DNA, bam. You can't muster that. You wouldn't be able to defeat that lady. Sorry, woman. You couldn't be able to defeat it. DNA doesn't play. There's no, oh, well, maybe, it's inconclusive. It's not. No, DNA is like, this is what it is. You can't fight this. You can't say this isn't what it is. So Roberta Elder definitely brought herself lower than an animal in killing these people. She brought her lower than a person who should be, recognized, could have, achieved something great. She could have been a chemist. She could have been, a biologist. She could have been a singer. She could have been anything but a serial killer. Like just the lowest rungs of humanity, a serial killer. I mean, just how awful is that? How terrible is that? How do you even form in your mind, like, but she didn't form in her mind, oh, I'm going to be a serial killer. She said, no, I got to get some money. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to poison these people. And I'm going to I have life insurance policies out on them already. And when they die, I'm going to get the money. And nobody's going to really suspect it because it's going to be lower increments. They're going to be very small amounts. They're not going to be exorbitant, amounts of money. They're not going to be like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. No, she was playing fast money. Yes, that's a good point, Torin. She was playing fast money. She was not even greedy. She wasn't even greedy. Greed is too good of a word for her. She was really envious. I think that's the best word. She was envious of people that were happy and enjoying their life and didn't have a problem with money. And she got, tired of that. She got tired of the envy and just went out and did the worst thing possible. That's the bare bones of this. But I just think that is just the most heinous aspect of this crime, these crimes, is that she denied them. She flat out denied them. I didn't even know what arsenic was. I didn't even do anything with arsenic. Oh, okay. They just happen to, you're standing upright on 2 legs and 2 feet, and they're laying, horizontal, not breathing anymore. But yeah, you didn't know what arsenic was, I'm sure. Okay. They said she got it maybe possibly from a farm, from a family member who had a farm, or from their own farm. I can't remember exactly, but you can look in the story. But yeah, she allegedly, this is where I'll say allegedly because I'm not sure exactly what it was, but got it from a farm and used it then. So I'm gonna go back to this. Video. I'm gonna show it one more time.
All right, think of a poison. I read your mind. Arsenic, right? Well, arsenic actually is a metal. And when we talk about arsenic being a poison, we're talking about compounds of arsenic, like arsenic trioxide or arsenic sulfide. Those are the classic ones. Arsenic sulfide is available as realgar or orpiment. These are naturally occurring minerals known to the ancients. So poisoning with arsenic goes back a long time. But most people, of course, are familiar with the 1944 movie Arsenic and Old Lace, or they've read Agatha Christie, who used arsenic as a poison, or perhaps heard stories about Napoleon, who was poisoned, so the story goes, by the British. Or, if you don't like that story, arsenic used in the wallpaper where he was imprisoned leached out into the air, and that poisoned him. Anyway, we know that arsenic is highly toxic. The Borgias, of course, used it to poison people. And then there was Giuliana Tofana, an Italian lady who specialized in creating wealthy widows by poisoning their husbands. It's not surprising that royalty was worried about being poisoned, mostly by arsenic, and kings had tasters. And of course, they could dispense with the taster. If the taster perished, they knew not to partake of the food. In ancient Korea, though, the kings had a different idea. They knew something about chemistry. They knew something about silver and tarnishing. Silver, of course, is a bright, lustery metal. But you know that if you leave it out into the air, this is what happens. It tarnishes. That is not silver oxide. That is silver sulfide. It happens because the air has traces of hydrogen sulfide that reacts with the silver and you get the tarnish. Of course, it can be cleaned off, but this is the bane of silverware collectors. Arsenic sulfide will react with silver to tarnish the silver. And the ancient Korean kings were aware of this. So what did they do to detect arsenic in the food, if there was any? They would resort to silver chopsticks. The idea was that if there was arsenic sulfide in the food, the silver would tarnish. Not likely to have worked because you need quite a bit of arsenic to tarnish the silver, and furthermore, it doesn't happen right away. Also, there are other foods that contain sulfides like garlic, so if they were eating garlic, that also would have tarnished the silver. But there is something interesting, though, historically, about the use of the silver chopsticks, because in Asia, of course, chopsticks have been popular for a very long time, made of bamboo or other types of wood. But Korea is the only Asian nation where metal chopsticks are still used. And that probably goes back to the time of the ancient kings, because the people wanted to emulate what the kings were doing, but of course they couldn't afford silver chopsticks, so they started to make chopsticks out of other metals. And that tradition has continued to this day. If you go to a Korean restaurant, a proper Korean restaurant, you will be given metal chopsticks. Of course, you won't be eating any food that is tainted with arsenic. Most likely you will be dining on kimchi, which is a fermented food, and it's very interesting because it contains a lot of bacteria, and as a probiotic, it is said to be good for us. So you don't have to worry about arsenic in the kimchi. However, the salt content, that's quite stunning. Of course, when you eat it occasionally, as we do in North America, it's not a worry. But in Korea, where they eat it often 3 times a day, there's a frightening increase in hypertension and also of gastric cancer that has been linked with the high salt content. And of course, the metal chopsticks are not going to detect the salt. Your taste buds will.
Just wanted to give that for proper context. Just the idea of what arsenic can do, what its function is, as a toxin in the human and any, I guess, most mammals digestive system and their overall health and well-being. It's very poisonous. Yes, poison is hard to trace, but back even in the 30s and 40s and 50s, they could still detect it. They could still detect the arsenic. They were able to discern where the arsenic was, in on the bodies of the young. Her name was Willie Mae, I think, or something like that. And her sister, and they were exhumed from the ground And because of one of the doctors that suspected, he was like, "Wait a minute, this is more than pneumonia. This isn't just pneumonia. This is actually arsenic." You know. But Roberta Elder, she did not claim any of it. None of it. She was not having it. She did not claim the fact that she killed these people. Not in any way, shape, or form. She was adamant, saying she didn't do it. But again, the giggling killer, she was a white lady. She murdered 11 people, and she got worldwide press. Worldwide press. See, this is not to celebrate. This is not to celebrate the serial killers. This is to acknowledge the people that dispatched the victims. That's what it is. That's what should have the quote unquote celebrity of a serial killer. It should have the notice, the notoriety instead of the fame, the infamous nature, not the famous nature, to prevent further killers from going ahead and doing this, and let the public know at large to beware of everyone around you. I mean, they say that a lot of the crimes. What is it like? I don't know what the percentage, but it's pretty high. 70 to 90% of the crimes that are committed are people that you know. Okay, Terrain, you're going way off the topic here, sir. I don't know what you're going. Where are you going? And you got the wrong word for the over here. I don't know where you're going. So back on top. You were doing well. You were on top. You were on your post. You're on your dean. Yeah, so she never claimed any of these murders. Never, not one. She was tried and found guilty and sentenced to life in prison for killing her husband. But the details of her tenure, her stint in prison, and her death are mainly mysterious. There's really no records regarding her being even in prison. It's just what some of the records show, but there's really not a lot what happened after, if she died in prison or if she got commuted or anything like that. Nothing really suggests that. So, I think that this is very this is very textured. If I can say, can I venture to say that this is very textured? It has so many different layers and levels to it. The fact is, a black woman in the mid 20th century murdering 14 people with arsenic. Like, it's just, if Toni Morrison got a hold of this, she would have probably went crazy. Rockin' power to Toni Morrison, but or Octavia Butler or something like that. Just maybe Terry McMillan will get a hold of it and she'll do something with it. Or maybe even Walter Mosley. Walter Mosley could do something. He'll do something with the color. He'll do the color of the murders, something like that. But yeah. So this whole story, it has to be broadcast. It has to be disseminated throughout the world so everybody knows. A black woman serial killer. Yes, there's such a thing. It's not just Dahmer. It's not just Bundy. It's not just Gacy. It's not just Gein or Geen. I always mess his name up. I think it's Geen, though. Geen and Kemper and Berkowitz. That's all cute. That's fine. White men. Great. Got you. Understood. But like I said, I had this whole trail. Samuel Little. You got, Harrison Graham and the others in the series. There's a whole lot. But Maury Travis, just to name a few. Black men, and here we have a black woman. But arsenic is a very powerful substance. Obviously, it took out these people. Took out these human beings that wanted life, had dreams, had aspirations, like I always say. could have lived to be in their 80s. They might be alive today. The daughters could be in their 80s and 90s. They're alive today. However, they were sorely and brutally taken out of this world at the hands of Roberta Elder. And she has to, I don't believe in a heaven or a hell. There is only heaven and hell exist on earth. Heaven is when you have conditions that are, conducive to peace of mind, happiness, joy, uplift. That's heaven. Whatever the activity you're engaged in, and you receive those chemicals in your head of serotonin and dopamine, that's heaven. But when you're forced to do, menial work or just live in terrible conditions and horrible lifestyle, and you're just in a web of destruction and ugliness, that's hell. And that's on earth. There's heaven and hell on earth. It's your choice, and for most cases, to choose whether you want to be in heaven or hell. Sometimes you don't get the choice, like in the Holocaust or slavery, American slavery especially. But that's I was just giving examples of what I think as an atheist. There's no heaven and there's no hell. Only on earth. Only to be found in this universe. Could be it's just especially on earth, because we haven't inhabited any other place for long periods of time, like the moon or Mars or something like that. Yeah, so Roberta, she didn't want to make history, I don't think. She just wanted to get money. Arsenic causes cellular death. Facts. Thank you, Turn. Now you're on point. See? You're on. You went off to the side a little bit, then you curved over and you went back on track. All right. Yes, arsenic causes cellular death. That's exactly right. And it's very simple. It masks itself as food poisoning or pneumonia. You have trouble breathing, or you have vomiting, or other ways of expelling the drug, or whatever pieces maybe in it. But that's the basics of it. That's just the basics. So to really dig deep into this kind of world, you have to understand psychology. I'm a low rent psychologist. I know how people think. I know what people think. But I'm not official. I'm not, authentic. I'm not, a true psychologist. I don't have a doctorate. I don't even have a master's, or I don't even have a bachelor's or associates. I'm just out here seeing, okay, I can understand why people are doing these things. Like with Roberta, it's very simple. She wanted money. It's just that simple. I don't think she was trying to harm anybody, or she was like, they were just a means to her end. She was just like, I got these life insurance policies. Why should I wait till they're in their 60s or 70s, which is the age, you most likely died around that time. I'm not waiting that long. I'm getting my money now. So she got her money. Nobody batted an eye. It just says she just got, some deaths in her family. Oh my God, that's so terrible. Here's your money, Seems like a really bad BET movie. Like if Tyler Perry could pull this off, and make it into a good movie, he might win an Oscar for it. I would like to see that. I just to spread like he did with the 488. See, what or the 8-4? Was it the 3-888 or the 4-888? I can't remember right now. Something like that, but I think it's the 4-888. Those were heroes. Those were heroines. Those were people that you can celebrate and say they were great and good and champions and great, wonderful. But You don't want to champion her, but you want to at least give her a documentary, like a full, like a complete documentary, not just like a YouTube, some clips and some stuff like that. I'm talking about a full, you sit down with doctors and investigators and forensic specialists and stuff like that. That's exactly what is required of her, as required of Roberta Elder. Is the fact that she should have had a better trial system to process every murder she committed. She would have probably had back-to-back death sentences, or and then possibly put on the gas chamber or an electric chair. And that's the question I got to look up to. I got to look up to. Do they still do the electric chair? They got the lethal injection. I know. They don't do hanging anymore. The last hanging was in 1996 in Delaware, in the state of Delaware. That was the last execution by way of hanging in the United States of America. I don't know if they do what is it called? Firing squads. I don't know if they do that anymore. I doubt that. I don't even know if they do gas. I think they do gas, continue to do gas. Not too sure about death row inmates going to the electric chair, though. Still trying to figure it out. Still trying to figure that out. But anyway, the arsenic, she was trying to be sly. She was trying to be like, oh, well, hell, put this in their food and the banana and the cheese. They'll never figure it out. They'll never see. They won't even see this coming. This would be nothing. Put this right in their cheese and put it right in his cheese and his banana. And he's throwing up and he's vomiting and he doesn't know why. He's sick. He's feeling awful. And in a few hours, few days, I think he's dead. Minister Elder. That's the sad part about all this, is that they can't speak from the grave. They can't say, yeah, it was her. She did it. They can't say anything. There's no words that can be said, sadly. They are the only ones that know, and they can't speak. The dead don't speak. So it's a very horrific set of events, and the elements of racism involved. Like, okay, why have the books with most notorious crimes, criminals, stuff like that, and not include Roberta Elder? Why not? Is it a black thing? Is it like the black people don't want to? Oh no, we don't want to. Let's talk about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. Come on, can we do another movie about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr.? Like, those are our go-to people that we have to explore. Can we talk about the computers from Hidden Figures? Can we talk about the artist from the Green Book? Can we do we have to? Yes, we have to. We have to explore her. Most police don't have resources to get criminals. That is true. From the case I just did, Wallace, Henry Louis Wallace, and Charlotte, North Carolina, they were so busy. Am I saying that? Is it? Hold on. Let me make sure I say that right. I have to make sure I say that right. I have to make sure I'm saying it right. Now, hold on. Yeah, Henry Louis Wallace. So this was during the crack era. This is during the crack era. So They were stretched. They didn't know what to do. They had all kinds of, people arresting crack dealers on the block with Nikes and $2,000, $5,000 in their pockets, just trying to get some money, getting some dollars off of no victims, nobody getting victimized, somebody's choice and another choice. A trade goes on. What happens? Oh my God, mercantilism. That was the basic role of the crack era. But for some reason, there was a thing called the war on drugs, quote unquote, a war on an inanimate object, and they were stretched. They only had like 7 or 8 investigators just for that. And they were sideswiped when a serial killer came in the midst, and they didn't know what to do. They were like, well, "What the hell? Do we continue with the crack people, or do we find this, this serial killer? What are we going to do?" So yeah, that's a good point, Turin. Most police don't have resources to get criminals. And think about what the resources were for 1938 to 1952. I mean, there was no units. I don't think there was hardly any unit. There might have been a small unit, a very, very, minute amount of investigators that were comprised that specific unit. And it didn't help anybody. It didn't help anyone, especially those that were victimized. Didn't help the families of the victimized or the extended families of the victimized. That's the sad reality of it all. Is that we, just science and engineering, didn't catch up. I mean, they could split the atoms. They split the atom bomb. They split the atom, but they didn't find conclusive evidence for the other 13 murders that Roberta Elder carried out in her lifetime. That is extremely sad to me. That is extremely sad. Because it didn't have to be. Get a second job, I don't even think, what was it, 1938? Did Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid come out? Not Medicare and Medicaid, they came out in the 60s. But Social Security came out in the 30s or 40s, I think, something like that. At the least, if you're going to use, if you're not going to, murder anybody. At least use something like that, But find work, create work for somebody else, Turin says a cliche. I don't know why I'm saying it, but all right. The best way to get away with a crime is to go under the radar. Apparently, yes, that's true. That is true. And Roberta was under the radar for a while. For a while, she skated. I said, she collected the money from the insurance policies. But it took the courage of the doctors. The doctors could have just said, forget it. It's just some nigger. Doesn't matter who they are. Just forget it. But they actually cared. Whoever the doctor was. Could have been white or black. I don't know what. But mainly, probably black, because they probably had segregated hospitals. But, could have been self-hatred to say, forget these niggers. I don't have time for this. On to the next. It was probably a he. I'm pretty sure it was a he at that time period. Said, no, we gotta investigate this. This can't be. Something's wrong here. Something's not jiving. Something's not vibing right. So he found the specific elements of arsenic on the bodies, in the hair. I think still on the dead bodies, even though they may have been washed and prepared for viewing and everything like that. But I think there was arsenic still within their clothing and possibly in their hair, and I would imagine in their digestive system as well, and throughout their body. I mean, this shouldn't scare. This shouldn't be scared. This should just keep you aware. That is the whole point of why I'm doing this series. Is because I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just trying to keep people aware that there are people out here. Salute to you, Turin. Salute to you. I appreciate you. Take care. But there's people out here that are actually wanting to do these things. There are bad actors. They're really horrible human beings walking around and riding around and driving around and doing things that are detrimental to human life. They for whatever reason, for whatever the case may be, there's not a lot of information on Roberta Elder's backstory, her childhood, or anything like that. Nothing after she was convicted and sentenced to prison. So it's just like just a middle ground, middle time frame when she committed these murders. Before that, who knows? After that, I don't have a clue. So we do have to take all that into account. It's not to be scary. It's to be wary. To be aware of all this, because this is life. This is real life. This isn't a fairy tale. This isn't like a novel. I mean, it could be made into a novel, but it's not like Agatha Christie or something like that, like the doctor mentioned, or like Napoleon was reportedly poisoned. But this is serious. Like he said, examples of people remember arsenic and old lace. Then he's not going to say, "Oh yeah, Roberta Elder." People be like, "Who the hell is Roberta Elder?" See, that's what I'm saying. Like, you have to have these stories broadcast and have to be well known to people. Otherwise, there's going to be a groundswell of people, of individuals, clamoring for this kind of information. They're going to be wanting to know, well, what did Roberta Elder do? Why was she here? Why was she with arsenic? Why did she do this? Why did she take out the life insurance policies? All this stuff is going to, build up into a point where people are going to just, really seek all this information and want to know. So I do think that, it is, selfishly, I think I'm doing a great service, telling people about these black serial killers, because that's what they are. They're black serial killers, and they're horrible. I'm not trying to put fame on them. I'm trying to notarize. I'm trying to make them notorious and infamous instead of famous. That's the reality. So I do believe that, in closing, Roberta Elder didn't have the temerity, didn't have the backbone, didn't have the spine. She may have had the brain, because she, it's always, like I said, with the white, male, serial killers. Oh, he's brilliant. He used his way of going into the house and was able to disable the alarm system and everything. He was a genius. He was a great mastermind. Oh my God. But with black person, he was mentally challenged. He didn't know what he was doing. He just wanted to do whatever he was. And that's true in some cases, but not in all. You had to be a real, some kind of a stalker in a way to carry out most of these crimes. But Roberta Elder, all she used was some arsenic. That's all she had in her repertoire. She didn't stab anybody. She didn't shoot anybody. She didn't slash anybody. She just used arsenic. She put it in the food. She put it in her food. They got sick. Oh my God, I'm feeling sick. My stomach hurts. I must have got food poisoning or something like that. Nope, sorry, you got poisoned by your auntie, your stepmom, your wife, your former wife. And that's how sad this whole case is. Hey, I'd like to thank everybody that came through right now. I will be back in this chair later on tonight, probably around 7 o'clock for my other show. I'm doing 2 shows today. So I will see you all, and thank you for watching. Take care.